So I just saw Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. This is the Raiders, Doom, Last Crusade. This is the fifth Indiana Jones film in the Indiana Jones series, what promises to be the final Harrison Ford chapter of the Indiana Jones saga. And a little bit about me first. I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark with my father in the theater back in '81. I was somewhere around 7 years old, and it was the coolest movie ever. Granted, a lot of films that I saw during that period of time, and even still now, become the coolest movie ever. But Raiders was unlike anything I personally had ever seen. My father liked action movies, so he was always, I love Raiders, a lot of action in it. And I'd always heard about the movie serials from the 30s and 40s, but I'd never seen them. And this was the people who brought us the greatest films of my youth, E.T., Star Wars, all that stuff, coming together to make this new adventure hero. And it was unbelievable, amazing, a little bit scary, kind of funny, and just really cool stunts and cool globe-trotting adventure. And then Temple of Doom, I'm not going to go through all these. Then Temple of Doom came out and the other ones came out. And I thought Last Crusade, back in 1989, was a great way to end the series. They ride off into the sunset. You just had a great adventure, great action, funny, just great set pieces. And then they made Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Now, I believe in something I call one sequel too many, where you've done enough, but you just do one more. One more for the fortune and glory or the cash or because the fans demand it or whatever, and you make one too many. And then ultimately people go, maybe we should have stopped at the last one. A lot of people feel that way about Crystal Skull. I didn't hate it when it came out, but as time has passed, it just seemed like you kind of don't regard that one quite as highly, you know? And at the time, it was great to see Indiana Jones again. Harrison Ford was still young enough to do a lot of stunts believably. CGI hadn't, totally, completely overtaken filmmaking as much as it has now. And when another Indiana Jones film was announced recently, or a couple years ago, the one we're here to talk about, the one I've brought you here to talk about today, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I was like, really? We kind of did this once too many already. What are we going to do now? He's a lot older. He really can't do what he used to do. And how are they going to do this? Well, I don't believe in spoilers, so I'm not going to tell you anything about this movie plot-wise, really. The trailers do a great job of that already. I just was scrolling through social media yesterday, and something that was, to me, a very wonderful surprise in the film, Lucasfilm had Large and in Charge on their Facebook page. So unless you see a movie opening day and try to studiously avoid all spoilers, it's really hard for there to be surprises in films anymore, which really bums me out. But luckily, I sort of did quite literally sometimes in the theater, blinders on and plugged my ears when the trailers came up. So I had only seen that initial trailer for this film. And I went in with low expectations, let's say. Partly because it looked like this movie was going to be not entirely about Indiana Jones, and this film was going to be Indiana Jones as kind of a buffoon, an old man buffoon, and that's not what I go to see an Indiana Jones movie for. So here's what I got out of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, 3 minutes into me rambling. It was fun. It was a fun matinee. The film opens with an extended sequence. I'm not going to say anything about it because, again, it's a wonderful surprise if you don't know that it's coming, that utilized some cutting-edge technology to do something that would have been impossible to do several years ago. And it kind of works for the most part, but I found the character who we're focusing on the most during that opening sequence, CGI still isn't there for everything, especially if it's faces and mouths and lip movements. It still looks like it looks like the animated baby talking in the commercial a long time ago. So I would recommend when you watch this, if you haven't seen it yet, maybe look elsewhere in the frame. Maybe look at the eyes of the character. Maybe just don't focus on the mouth. The opening sequence is great fun, but it is also clearly widespread use of CGI and green screen, which is how they make movies today. I know that. But the thing about the original Indiana Jones films, the first three, I'm kind of like this with Star Wars too, by the way. There were 3 Star Wars movies, and then there was a lot of well-funded fan fiction. I almost kind of feel that way about Indiana Jones. There were 3 Indiana Jones movies, and they made a couple more. So this opening sequence, which is what most people are saying they love the most about this film, is a thrilling adventure. It's a lot of fun. It's funny. It's cool. But it's so heavily reliant on CGI and modern technology that you don't really feel the threat. In the old days, back in my day, back in 1981, 1980 of Indiana Jones, of Raiders of the Lost Ark, shall we say, when it was a guy hanging off a truck, it was a guy hanging off a truck. There were safety protocols. It wasn't as dangerous as it looks on film, but it was a guy hanging off a truck. And when a guy was being dragged by a rope on that truck, that's what you saw. Guy fell off a ladder, guy fell off a ladder. Nowadays, it's so clear in my mind that what I'm seeing is so manipulated. There's no sense of danger. When a guy jumps off a height and lands in the water in a film, I just feel like it's digital guy, digital water, digital thing he jumped off, digital background. It's just like there's no sense of peril. That's why I love the Jackie Chan movies, the classic Chan films, is that nobody got, well, people did get hurt in the classic Jackie Chan movies, but you feel like there's a sense of danger for the character, at least, because it's all existing in the real world. It's not all in the virtual world. So this opening to Dial of Destiny is very cool, and a lot of people love it, and could feasibly point the way on how to do more Indiana Jones adventures, but it didn't have the sense of gravitas for me. If you can just forget everything and just go along with the story like you're watching a cartoon or whatever, most people probably can suspend their disbelief more than me at this point, as far as action and stunts go. Thrilling. But it was a little of that. Indiana Jones was always a guy who was an adventurer and was willing to put himself at risk to get, the job done. But it wasn't like wildly ridiculous. I mean, yeah, he jumped out of a plane with a inflatable raft in midair and went down a ski slope. But other than that, physics tended to apply to him for the most part. And this opening sequence in Dial of Destiny, it kind of goes into modern action where it's like Van Helsing, which I thought was a terrible film. Van Helsing, it's like, how much more can we pack into this to make it even more exciting? So Van Helsing it's somebody is trapped in a runaway wagon. That's scary. They're on a cliffside. Oh my God. It's on fire. Oh my God. And there's a werewolf on top. It's just like enough. Any one of those is fun. Dial of Destiny's opening kind of went into that category. And again, later in the film, it kind of went into that area. But so how is Indiana Jones as an 80-year-old man? The film predominantly, I'll tell you this, the film predominantly takes place 1970, I want to say, 69, 70. I'm not 100% on the date, but let's just say late 60s, early 70s. And Indiana Jones is a retiring professor from his longtime New York City archaeological teacher job. And someone from his past shows up and says, hey, there's this thing from your past that somebody we mutually know. I'm really not going to tell you much about this. There's this artifact from the past that someone we mutually know was driven mad by, and I think we can find this thing. And we then find that bad guys are looking for this thing too. So it becomes a chase. Indiana Jones winds up being implicated in a crime, has to go on the run. And as a friend of mine said, he is sort of a reluctant participant in this adventure. He is not leading this adventure. He is trying to clear his name and find this person from his past and find this artifact before the bad guys do. Bad guy honcho is played by Mads Mikkelsen, probably mispronounced that, who's great. He was Le Chiffre in the Daniel Craig Casino Royale, and he's a great actor. He's been in a lot of things, and he just brings that cold evil, that cold, calm evil to the role, and it's fantastic. And his plot is pretty cool, and eventually the movie goes in a very fantastical direction. And I know when Crystal Skull came out, people were really, I'm going to spoil Crystal Skull. When Crystal Skull came out, and there was an aspect of the film that dealt with aliens, some people were like, it was ridiculous. You've brought these Indiana Jones movies into a ridiculous arena. Aliens, that's just stupid. And I'm just like, the Indiana Jones movies were always supernatural. People don't really think of that. They were always kind of sci-fi supernatural films. Crystal Skull just went a little bit in a different direction. And Dial of Destiny also goes in a direction we've never seen in an Indiana Jones movie. And some might see it as ridiculous. Some might see it as, man, that's cool. I saw it as a plot device that I never saw coming. I never thought that it would do what it did, and I'm happy that it did it, because it is so rare these days to see a film that surprises you in any way. Unless you manage to go to see a movie and honestly not see any trailers for them and not read anything online. I don't seek out online news, but I scroll, and a lot of my friends are film people, and Facebook will give you things that you didn't ask to see, and more often than not, things get ruined, and people, they delight in being the first person to have information to share. And I want a movie to unfold on its terms for me. Any story is based on surprise. No story works necessarily. Most stories don't work better if somebody says, okay, here's what's going to happen in it. It's better to just find out. I love that I just found out where the movie goes. I didn't really know how that section of the film was going to resolve itself. And ultimately what you get in this film, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, is a very respectful look at the Indiana Jones character. I was really afraid they were going to make him a doddering old man that some young sassy female has to save and show him how to do his business. And there is a little of that in there, but ultimately it's very respectful to Indiana Jones. It's a wonderful way. The last shot, the last scene is a wonderful way to wrap up his character, which isn't to say that more Indiana Jones adventures might not exist in other media. There have been novels and comic books and games, video games for years. There's always room for more Indiana Jones, but Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones is over, and I'm okay with that. I would have been okay with that if that was a statement that had a big dark period at the end of it back in 1989, but now it's sort of redeemed itself from Crystal Skull for a lot of people. What else did I want to say about this film? So the whole thing about the young sassy female having to basically, show Indiana Jones how to do his job. Some people get offended by that. I got no beef with a female action character or female leads or whatever. Strong female leads is always great, or side by side, Speaking of Jackie Chan, hey, Michelle Yeoh. And at first I was like, there are long stretches where Indiana Jones kind of feels like a guest star in his own movie. But at the same time, I think I'm not one of those people who just desperately wants to see their heroes do it one more time. I'm a realist in that time passes for people. Time passes in terms of just duration, and the time for something can pass, and it's just, you don't do that anymore. And you see some people like Schwarzenegger, who's great, and Stallone, trying to make movies, and Jackie Chan even, unfortunately, try to make it look like they could do what they could do 40 years ago. And they're elder statesmen, they can still act, they can still be cool and do some things, but the amount of camera tricks and CGI and all this other stuff that goes into making them try to look like they could do what they could do back in the 80s, it's just dumb to me, and it takes me out of the film, and it's unnecessary. And I kind of prefer that this Indiana Jones movie didn't do that. For the most part, what we see Indiana Jones do in this movie is feasible for a man of his age who has a sense of adventure and has kept himself in good shape and isn't afraid of, maybe hurting himself seriously in what he does. For the most part, it's not over-the-top ridiculousness. And if you can't have your adventure hero doing that in an action-adventure movie, it either becomes a different kind of movie and a different kind of genre that most people probably won't want to see, but would be interesting if it was just a drama about Indiana Jones in his later years. You have to have somebody else doing it. So that's where we have the younger female character in this, and a kid, memories of Short Round coming up, doing a lot of the more ridiculous stuff in the film, and that's okay. It's an Indiana Jones adventure. He always had somebody else with him in all these films, and in this case, this is just who he has with him. And he's an old man. Harrison Ford's great. Indiana Jones' character is great. Great to see him again. He's an old man. He can't really do that, and I don't think as an audience member I would buy him doing that at this point in time. And I certainly wouldn't want to see, even more than there already is in the film, of face replacement and CGI stuff to try to make it look like he's doing it, because it just looks fake. So anyway, I have rambled for a really long time about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I haven't really talked all that much about it because I think the plot should be something that you discover while you watch the film. But it is cool. It is fun. Steven Spielberg is not directing this one. It's James Mangold, who does a fine job. And it does recapture the spirit of Raiders at times in some subtle and not so subtle ways. And I think it's fun. Is it anywhere near as good as the first three? Probably not. I'd like to watch them all again and reassess them. A lot of friends are doing that right now. But for me, it's Raiders, then Last Crusade, maybe then Temple, or this. I'm not sure. Crystal Skull is certainly last, but I do want to watch Crystal Skull again. I'm just rambling at this point. In theaters now, not doing very well apparently. So this is definitely a big screen movie. I saw this on a Dolby theater screen, huge screen, great sound. It's an Indiana Jones movie. It's meant to be seen in a theater. Please go see this on the biggest screen you can with good sound while it's in theaters. If a film doesn't do that well, it tends to get pushed out of theaters relatively fast. If you watch this video months down the line, none of this matters. You'll watch it on TV. But ultimately, everything is better in a theater. Certainly a Lucas Spielberg type film. So in theaters now, or if this is down the line, now streaming on Disney Plus or on Blu-ray, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.